This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by mail-to-jail.com, something that rhymes with com. In a concrete box, somewhat smaller than this one, a quirky New Hampshire videographer nears the middle of a 6-day jail sentence. He is jailed for journalism. He is me. On Thursday, July 9th, 2009, I am on the third day of my stay. And I'm able, I think on that day, to send out my first message. It reads, "Am doing fine. Following same non-cooperation pattern as at Essex, not answering 2/3 of official questions. May be punished for declining to give middle initial. Personnel behaving professionally. Am severely limiting use of commissary account. Numbers to call collect would be helpful. Preparing for months of lockup in event of Sam-style crackdown over middle initial. Have received 4 letters as of Wednesday evening. All from mail to jail. Many thanks." And that's the end of the first transmission I was able to get out from the jail via phone, which I had transcribed word for word. And by the way, my earlier report saying that I got 8 letters on that third day actually was not accurate. It was 4 letters. And later, I started getting a lot more mail per day. Anyway, I mentioned that I was able to go out for recreation, and that experience turned out to be both pleasant and painful. I think when they took me out for recreation, I sort of felt a fraction of what my predecessor in that facility must have endured. Sam Dodson of Keene committed the same crime, quote-unquote crime, of trying to videotape in a court lobby. But he stayed in jail much longer, 58 days, because he refused to give a name when he came in. He also, in some cases, made them drag him around rather than walking where they told him to. Anyway, I get a taste of Sam's treatment when a female guard puts a pair of handcuffs on me behind my back and tightens them really tight. Now, it may be that inmates are often tightened even tighter than this, but to me, this was pretty painful, and although I didn't say anything, it took the breath out of me. She apologizes and loosens the cuffs slightly. Then she escorts me outside. It is, I believe, my first trip outside this roughly 4 by 10 box that they've had me in. I find myself under sky in an empty basketball court. Outside the court stands a guard. Since there's nothing else for either of us to do, we converse about liberty philosophy for most of my stay outside. I'm, I guess, out there alone rather than with the other prisoners because of the fact that I have refused to provide information. The guard expresses a belief, not surprisingly, that there's a need for jails, but brings up the fact that he thinks there's probably not a need for bailouts. By that, of course, we're not talking about jail bailouts, but federal bailouts of financial institutions. I actually obtained the names of most of the guards, but I'm not relaying those to you because I want to make sure I don't get any of the guards in trouble for anything that they say to me. Now, if I did see a guard commit an abuse, then maybe I would give a name. Or if I'm sure they haven't said anything to me that might get them in trouble. I don't think it's a good idea to do anything that would discourage guards from talking to us when we're in there. Speaking of guards talking to us, I forgot to mention that while I was in the cell, one of the guards walks by, someone I think I hadn't seen before, and he tells me that he is a fan of the Ridley Report, or at least that he watches the Ridley Report. He seems as though he is in the process of meeting a celebrity. He, I think, takes pains not to be too complimentary, but he says the program is very interesting, which is plenty complimentary for me. And then I guess it was right after this rec area visit that I'm taken to I guess what they call a day room area and given, half an hour or an hour to myself. And that's where I'm able to make the call and get out my first message. It's also a place where I learn a hard lesson, and that is that if you do not have a relatively large number of phone numbers memorized, you could be in trouble. And by this I mean landlines you can call, collect, to leave messages. And of course, you can't just call them. They can't just be landlines you can call collect. They have to be a landline that someone's there. So you have to really have multiple numbers to be able to reliably get a message out. The first time I tried to call out, I called multiple people, and it was very difficult for me to find anyone who was actually home and able to take the call. Another thing, of course, to keep in mind is that there's an expense involved in making the calls. The person accepting the call would have to pay for it, and if you call outside New Hampshire, it's much more expensive than calling inside. Apparently, the most efficient thing you can do from the Cheshire County Jail is to make a collect call to someone inside New Hampshire. That is actually, I think, cheaper even than prepaid. Now, back in my cell, I have some stuff to report about some of the things that happened to people next to me. One of my blockmates had something he was saying to the guards, or at least saying about them, and I thought was quotable. He said, quote, "You guys are going to turn me into an asshole," unquote. I think that pretty much encapsulates everything that the jails in America do. Of course, the jails have some effect on me, too. While I'm asleep, one night, I dream that I have provided psychological data to an ice cream store, and the ice cream store has sold it to the jail, so the jail now knows everything about me, even though I haven't answered questions. The government, of course, government shrink then tries to use it to throw me into a Soviet-style loony bin, and I lose my temper, in my dream, and raise my voice. Now, I'm not sure why psychological data was in the dream. I don't really remember withholding any, but for some reason that was in the dream, I guess because of the Soviet tie-in and the way the Soviets were so interested in psychology. But anyway, I also discover in my dream that I have a hot girlfriend, but that I had forgotten her in a fit of amnesia. And I also dreamed that a jail doctor has a terrible prognosis for me. But in the waking world, at least, I am at peace. Perhaps too much peace. I make no enemies in the facility, but I have a limited impact. The guards' refusal to crack down heavily on my civil disobedience inside the jail seems to be paying off. At least for them. Do you want to support a jailed New Hampshire liberty activist? Without even leaving your computer? Without even spending a dime? Send them mail in jail from your computer. It's easy and free. For details, visit mail-to-jail.com, something that rhymes with com.